$1400 hours, you're watching Eswatini TV Market View. This is the first one for the week. Welcome to the program. My name is Fisong Umala. Very happy to host you here on the program this afternoon. On the agenda today, the Youth Sustainable Development Center is championing a bold vision that is going to place young people at the heart of Eswatini's transition to a greener and more sustainable future. Through climate education, green skills development, entrepreneurship support, circular economy initiatives, and policy advocacy, the organization is empowering youth to become drivers of environmental sustainability as well as economic transformation. Its latest project, Cultivating the Green Economy, Empowering Youth Entrepreneurs for a Sustainable Eswatini, seeks to address youth unemployment by unlocking opportunities within the growing green economy. And joining us for this conversation is going to be YSDC Director Nokuthula Mamba. She will tell us more about this initiative and how it is creating pathways for young people to lead in climate action and green enterprise. That is the core agenda of the program when we get to our Enterprise Watch segment. But before that, let's look at some of the business news defining the business landscape in Eswatini today. On our first story, Eswatini may soon be able to use movable property as security when applying for loans, as efforts to establish a national movable collateral registry that continue in the country. And this is contained in a statement by the Central Bank of Eswatini. The CBE is in partnership with the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, known as the AFI, and they hosted a workshop that brought together commercial banks, microfinance institutions, and government ministries to help advance the initiative. Speaking during the session, Director of Financial Regulation Lungile Dlamini said limited collateral options remain a major challenge in accessing finance, particularly for women-led micro, small and medium enterprises. She explained that the current financial system mainly favors fixed assets such as land and buildings, even though many entrepreneurs possess valuable movable assets, including machinery, vehicles, inventory, livestock, crops, receivables, and intellectual property, which are all often not fully recognized by lenders. Dlamini said the proposed movable collateral registry is more than just a technical reform, describing it as an important step towards promoting fairness, improving efficiency, and expanding economic opportunities. Guided by the National Financial Inclusion Strategy 2023 to 2028 and the Gender Inclusive Finance Roadmap, the initiative seeks to increase access to credit and encourage greater participation in the economy. In other stories, rising project costs, delayed delivery timelines, and profitability challenges continue to affect businesses in the constitution industry. To address these concerns, industry players are undergoing intensive training at Sibanesami Hotel in Eswatini. Now, this training is aimed at bridging the gap between winning tenders and delivering profitable and successful projects. The training is hosted by the Eswatini Contractors Association.
Edward Dlamini, the consultant facilitating the training, says contractors must ensure that they keep proper records and maintain clear communication with clients regarding any changes made during project implementation. He says this is important to avoid disputes when project costs increase or deadlines are extended.
Asesithi nje kuba nelishintsho loluside lana clients sofuna kungeda noma sofuna sivalo lesesidulile lesesibuya ngesheya kwetelwandle lana ke kuyendeka lana ukuthi kufanele ukuthi maybe lesivalo sesidulile noma lesivalo sesitawuphutha kufike lokusho ukuthi lapho kune element ukuthi maybe there will be delay in time ye-delivery of the thing. So what is expected from the contractor ukuthi abhale i-notice ayibhalele clients amtshele ukuthi hey lesivalo lothi uyasifuna nyalo sesitawudula and sitawuphutha kufika i-project itawubambeleleka ngeke isaphela ngesikhathi ke clients ufuna bese uyaphendula athi hayi qhubeka ngidakuniketa isikhathi and ngiyathi ukuthi kutawubita malini lokho ke kwakha lobuhlobo between laba ababili ngoba abakafihlelani lutho ngeke kwenteke ukuthi ekugcineni kwako konke lo munye aqhamuka seprice seyisetulu njengoba sesive nje ukuthi soyamangala client noma uhulumende ukuthi hawu iprice seyaba setulu sekushintshe kanjani ngilokuthi bebangakhulumi ezikwenteka.
He further mentions that if a client requests changes to a project, the contractor must immediately inform the client about the possible impact on the cost and delivery timelines. Dlamini urges contractors to keep written communication records so that should disputes over delays or inflated costs end up in court, they will have evidence to support their case. Vusi Mngomezulu, a member of the executive of the Eswatini Contractors Association, says the association decided to organize the workshop after realizing that many contractors are struggling to secure tenders.
Contractors lamanengi akhala ngekuthi lemsebenzi ayitholakali kahle and nayingatholakali kahle ukhanza ukuthi lama contractors.
He further says most contractors also lack the necessary expertise to handle important documentation required for smooth and professional working environment. Mngomezulu says the workshop is aimed at equipping contractors with the knowledge and skills needed to improve their operations, strengthen professionalism, and increase their chances of successfully competing for tenders. Reporting, Nelson Langamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa, Ezulwini.
Now that marks the end of our business news. We are in conversation with the Youth Sustainable Development Center after the ad break. Stay with us.
To all the viewers of Eswatini TV in the kingdom and beyond. Eswatini TV is regulated by the Eswatini Communications Commission through the Broadcasting Code and Broadcasting Guidelines. Under these instruments, the station commits to broadcasting information and news that have been fact-checked, programs and content in respectful language with no elements of hate speech, violence or sexual activity. If you hear any unsuitable content on this channel, you have a right to voice your complaints with the station management. Should you not be satisfied with the response or action taken, you can escalate your matter to the Communications Commission at PO Box 7811 Babani. Call 2406 7000 or send an email to info@esccom.org.sz. For more information, visit www.esccom.org.sz.
Welcome back. The Youth Sustainable Development Center, known as the YSDC, is implementing a one-year initiative under the Eswatini Green Growth Accelerator. They're doing it with a project titled Cultivating the Green Economy, Empowering Youth Entrepreneurs for Sustainable Eswatini. The initiative seeks to close the gap between high youth unemployment in the kingdom and the growing yet underutilized opportunities within the green economy. Now, to explore this transformative program further, we are joined by Nokuthula Mamba, the director, who unpacks the vision behind the initiative. Always lovely to have you in the program. Very good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon to you too. Sifiso, it's a pleasure to be on this show once again, and also greetings to all Swazis who are tuned in.
What inspired the launch of this initiative? It sounds very grand and very urgent, you know, especially when you read what it seeks to achieve. What gap did you see, first and foremost, and what inspired this initiative?
The gap that we have seen, especially that came out from the NDC 2.0 report, is the lack of youth participation within the climate action space in Eswatini. And furthermore, the other challenge that we have identified is the lack of youth participation in the innovation and entrepreneurship environment that also seeks to ensure that as Eswatini, we are a country that is transitioning just and in a fair manner for everyone, whilst also protecting the environment and addressing other social economic issues such as issues of unemployment, issues of poverty, and maybe issues of effective youth participation in the development space.
You know, unemployment, poverty, and participation in the development space. Maybe let's go in that order and start with unemployment. As you put it, it remains to be one of the countries, in fact, the most pressing challenge in Eswatini and certainly in Africa right now. How does the green economy then come in there and become a viable source of employment as well as perhaps entrepreneurship opportunities for young folk?
So the Green Growth Accelerator program actually ensures that young people are not just waiting for someone to employ them, but it ensures that young people are able to turn their innovative ideas and solutions into actual start-up or businesses that will not only address maybe that problem that they have identified, which can be environmental or climate challenge based idea, but will ensure that the idea or the business that they are already implementing is also seeking to support the economic growth of the country, which can be supported by ensuring that majority of the Swazis, especially youth, where we at this moment we have a staggering statistics of 49% of youth in Eswatini are unemployed. So we're hoping by supporting the youth green businesses, they will be able to also support the country development goals in terms of reducing unemployment, especially amongst the youth.
And I suppose subsequently that also feeds into, you know, the other salient point that you mentioned, which is alleviating poverty and the participation. I think you've answered both there in that answer. Maybe let's look at now some of the green skills, and I want you to unpack those for us. The green skills and entrepreneurship training that these young people, these participants are going to receive from the program.
So the green skills and capacity building program or focus areas that we have designed is firstly being able to run a green business. One of the key issues that maybe came out from an assessment that we did for youth in the green business space is that most of them have never received a training that is strictly catered to say, how do I run a green business? Because running a green business and running a business that is sort of supporting socio-economic and environmental development, not just supporting to make profit, is different. So you have to maybe focus on a number of areas. Firstly, you have to check whether your green business idea is it really viable? Is it supporting the mitigation and the adaptation measures that the country is targeting within NDC 3.0? And then also, what exactly is it contributing towards environmental sustainability? If you say it's waste management, how much waste are you able to manage, and what does that mean for other businesses? What does it mean for the environment as well? And what does that also mean for the global emissions that we are all committed to reduce? So, and then also the part of profit. How then do you maximize a profit as a green startup? Because most of green startups are struggling with funding. How do you ensure that you are able to receive funding from banks? You are able to receive funding maybe from other international organizations that are willing to support startups? And then how then do you grow from just an idea to a sellable product.
Yeah.
How do you scale up? Because one of the other challenges that we foresaw from that assessment was that most of the businesses have been operating from 3 to 5 years, and after that the young person decides, you know what, let me just drop this and go look for a job because I'm struggling to scale up.
Yeah.
But how can we then assist you with innovation and research support to scale up that business into making a meekly operating business, other than a small business or an idea phase business where you are still testing your products, whether they are available for the market or not? And then how then do you engage the market? Because as Swazis, yes, we still have those misconceptions in terms of supporting green business. They are expensive. They don't have enough capacity to deliver the quantity that we want. But how then do you engage that market, and how then can the market support your idea so that we now understand that we're not just supporting you as a business person, but we are also playing a role towards environmental sustainability?
And I come from the school of thought that that is essentially where we solve the unemployment crisis, when we scale up these small enterprises, because then we go from the founder employing themselves to employing more people into their own enterprise, and that is certainly what we've been lacking for a very long time. And so excited to see that coming to life. Let's talk about climate action, because you have been championing climate action, climate education and awareness for this is before this initiative itself. How does this new initiative now build on the work that you had already established on the ground regarding climate education and awareness?
So this initiative basically sustains the work that we have been doing on education and awareness. We have shared about the problems, we have shared about what is contributing to the problem. But now what we're saying, let's turn our solution or our ideas in solving the climate change programs into saleable ideas. We cannot raise enough awareness, but we need to also engage in behavioral change in terms of what is it that I consume and how do I consume that, and what is it that in my behavior am I doing that can also sort of like support entrepreneurship in the country and also support my environmental sustainability initiative as an individual. Like if I'm buying something, a cup of coffee, it would be pleasing to me as just a general person to understand that that cup of coffee or that reusable cup of coffee that I'm using is actually made from recycled material, and then from the recycled material it's supporting maybe 5 people that are now employed by recycling everything that I'm using. And it also pushes me now to be aware that I shouldn't just focus on maybe single-use containers or single-use products, but I should also be in the awareness that I need to look out for business. What is it that you are doing for environmental sustainability? What is it that you're doing to address climate change? In terms of your water, do you conserve your water? How do you utilize natural resources as businesses? So it pushes us from just an individual action into a group and also business action, which is key for us to combat the climate change effect that we are faced with today.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you've also answered the question around the circular economy, because too often the term can be either misinterpreted or not understood at all in terms of what it does in practical terms. And you mentioned recycling, issues of waste management are quite critical there, as well as sustainable production. And I'm happy that you made it practical. But I also want us to talk about youth participation and its importance, because when I read here, your priorities are ensuring youth voices are represented in climate policy discussions. Just how important is that young people are represented in that regard?
That is very much important, because when you look at the population of Eswatini, young people are a majority. But now when you look at the policies in Eswatini, they're not reflecting the issues that youth are faced with. And in a way of reflecting, we're not saying that they're not addressing the issues, but they are not addressing the issues directly in a youth effective manner. Just like the issue of employment, we find ourselves moving from one pillar to another instead of saying what skills do young people have, and what is it that youth are already doing? But we find ourselves redesigning youth initiatives, coming up with short-term youth projects that will absorb young people. But young people are already engaged. Young people are already engaged in the circular economy. What is it that we are doing to support them other than bringing another circular economy project that will employ young people? We have young people in the climate smart agriculture. What is it that we are doing for youth in the climate smart agriculture other than coming up with another project that will seek to engage? Maybe, oh, we're going to buy a farm, and then from the farm we will employ young people. But young people already have their own agri-entrepreneurial skills.
Yeah.
Why can't we support young people to acquire land easily, and then from that land to also have some sort of a bond that is set aside for just youth green businesses, whether in the agriculture, in the waste, in the energy sector? That is just strictly focusing on youth. And I see now there's even programs that are being designed to say, how can we ensure that there is a certain employment quota of young people within certain sectors? But we also need to move away from just employment to also entrepreneurship. How can we ensure that young people are the ones starting and running this business successfully? What support is there for them? So if we can strike that balance, so that is the most important part of ensuring that young people participate in climate action, policy design and implementation.
100%. Nokuthula Mamba, thank you so much for your time. She's the director from the Youth Sustainable Development Center, and we are talking this new initiative they call Cultivating the Green Economy, and they are theming it Empowering Youth Entrepreneurs for a Sustainable Eswatini. Sanele SBI is on standby for numbers in Wall Street after the break.
Those that are in pain must forget all the problems they have. Because the things of the earth have got no answer. But the answer that we have is all morning. When I'm preaching here, I'm preaching to myself. I receive the Holy Spirit.
I declare that a turnaround is coming my way.
Turnaround is coming in my life.
Our market analysis now with Sanele SBI, our economist and analyst in finance, who joins us virtually to help us really understand the numbers today. Sanele, a very good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Really, just take us through the numbers today.
Thank you, Mr. Ngumalo. Good afternoon to you, and a good afternoon also to the viewers at home. So what we see in moving markets today, Ngumalo, is issues to do with the potential breakthrough or the strides that are being made towards a breakthrough in terms of that U.S.-Iran hostilities there. And also we've seen that there are no hostilities that are ongoing right now. But what we're seeing as well is since Friday, we've seen the numbers there in terms of Brent crude oil coming down drastically to below $100 per barrel mark, and now that somehow shifted the mood on Wall Street on Friday. What happened at close of business on Friday in the US when the markets were now responding to those news was, number one, we saw the Dow Jones Industrial Average breaking that 50,000 mark, gaining 290 94 points in today's trade. And also we saw the Nasdaq Composite Index gaining 50 points in today's trade. We also saw the Standard & Poor's Index gaining some 27.75 points to stay at that all-time high level that we're seeing there. So now what the combination of that in the markets is when you look at the 10-year bond yield in the US, it somehow went down at the news of those of the potential ceasefire news. We've seen it going down. So when it goes down, it sends a signal to the Feds that we didn't rush into a very high interest rate environment, and we didn't rush into pushing interest rates even further up, and that's what we are seeing there, because there is a potential ceasefire on the table, and we've actually seen news coming out of Tehran today, which were showing and pointing to the fact that there is progress being made towards a ceasefire, and coming out of Tehran now, that gave markets even a further boost in today's trade. So wait to see how that is going to play out in the U.S. market post Independence Memorial Day celebrations today, and we know that there won't be trades being posted in today's trade in the U.S. And then coming down into the UK markets, what we're seeing is there's no activity in the UK. It's the normal spring holiday, the bank spring holiday. But when we move into the greater Eurozone in Frankfurt, there we're seeing the markets up 372 points, and in Paris we are seeing the markets up 128 points. Now that is actually in response to the fact that the price of Brent crude oil has dropped below the $100 per barrel mark, and now that somehow what takes off the inflationary pressures that the economy was dealing with, and we then get to see a favorable mood within the markets. And then also what this means is if inflation comes down very fast, what we're then not going to have is a situation where interest rates are going to rise probably 2 times this year, which was what markets were expecting. But right now, if we could have a breakthrough in those ceasefire talks, we then expect the interest rates to be up just once while inflation tapers off, and then we'd expect that towards the end of the year or towards early 2027, then they're going to begin their downward descent following the cooling in inflationary pressures. So the mood in markets continues when you move on into the Asian region, the Orientals there. So we're seeing, very positive sentiment with Japan breaking the 65,000 mark for the first time. That's another all-time record, gaining at 1,019 points in today's trade, showing that markets are pricing in some risk. But the fact that the news have now come out of Tehran in terms of the progress being made, so there is a bit of trust and a bit of faith in the process leading towards a ceasefire. But Tehran did say that, an agreement is miles away. But the fact that we have progress and the markets are starting to price in a return to normalcy and, a restoration of supply chains coming out of the Persian Gulf. And then coming into mainland China, we know there's a holiday in the Hong Kong Autonomous Region, so we have to move on straight into Shanghai. When we're there, we're seeing again positive sentiments coming through from from those news, and the Shanghai Composite Index climbing 39.67 points in today's trade, largely buoyed by the fact that, markets pricing in, that movement towards a ceasefire within that region. And then also we know that China has internal growth problems, and one of those was firm output and firm level data. We've been seeing shrinking firm level data, the firm output, and then only looking into the ceasefire potentially coming through in the next month or two, then what that means is you should then start seeing that restoration of supply and capacity, because you'd be moving away from a market that's a bit tends to spend into a market that is willing to spend. So that is being priced in, and also markets are pricing in a stimulus to come through from the Central Bank of China, and then also from the fiscal arm that is the government side of things. And then coming into Johannesburg, Johannesburg is up 2,651 points in today's trade. Again, responding to those news, and then also what we are seeing with those news coming into effect is a slight nudge in the price of gold. Now that is further supporting the rally that we are seeing in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And then also what we are seeing is going to be, that restoration of the industrial base. And coming into the commodities, what we are seeing happening in terms of gold is up 48.8 points because of those movements within that ceasefire deal. And, we're also seeing that supporting the 10-year bond yield, where it's beginning to climb down. And once it begins that descent, then it minimizes the chance of a rise in interest rates. So we're seeing a return to gold. And then the price of Brent crude oil down to $94.51 per barrel. And then coming into our currencies, the Lilangeni is relatively stronger against the dollar, against the euro, and against the Japanese yen, trading at 16.33 against the dollar, and trading at 19.01 against the euro, and trading at 9.74 against the Japanese yen. So what's driving that right now is the return of confidence in emerging economies, and we're seeing a flow back in terms of those exchanges, and the expectation of an increasing market coming into the coming future. Thank you, Mr. Ngumalo. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Likewise, thank you to our viewers as well for staying with us. May they also have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye.
Mswatu inkosi thula akayithathe akahambe nayo akayithathe yenza kade